Hello, and welcome back to Closing and Cuddles. My name is Karen Barrios with the Barrios Co., and this is Ray Barrios.
Hey, everybody.
And today we're going to be talking about the 5 cons to moving to Pine Mountain Club.
In 2023.
In 2023. So if you have found us, or if you have subscribed to our podcast or to our weekly newsletter, or you saw our shorter video leading you to here, we actually have a 5 pros.
Yep. So last week we did the pros edition. We led with our strong foot first. This week we're doing the cons because obviously no community is perfect.
Correct.
Pine Mountain Club included. And this video is the long, extended, unabridged version of the video you probably came from.
Yes.
So this is just our candid experience, our anecdotal experience of being full-timers in Pine Mountain Club. So there should be something applicable to whether you're trying to move up there part-time, have a vacation home, you're trying to do the full-time move, which we did. Hopefully there's something in here that you didn't get from the shorter version of this video that probably you clicked on. And
or just from looking online for Pine Mountain Club. There's not a lot of information.
Not a lot of info.
The first step is always to work with the local real estate agent. We would love to support you. We're real estate professionals, and we are experts in this community. But one of the things that outside from our personal experience, it really is a collective of knowledge too, from working with clients, from hearing from the community, and there's always both sides. That's why we did a top 5 pros, top 5 cons, because we want to give you guys a really good perspective. And what is the one thing we always tell buyers when it comes to looking at Pine Mountain Club?
Well, we like to tell them that we want to sell the community as a whole and not just the house that they're buying.
A lifestyle.
Yeah.
Not just even the community, honestly.
The lifestyle.
The lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's really about, does this lifestyle fit your needs in this season of your life? I think that's our number one priority, because we want to make sure that you don't, just move here and then a year from now have to move out. And I've had to encounter some people that unfortunately, I didn't support them in buying their homes, and they just didn't have that good knowledge. And at the end of the day, as a buyer or as someone wanting to transfer and move here, you have to do your due diligence and you have to immerse yourself as much as you can. But let's get started.
Yeah.
What's the number one con why not to move to Pine Mountain Club this 2023?
Yeah. And the pros list, I feel like, was kind of in order of importance. This one is not necessary. These aren't in like a order, in any particular order. They're just some cons to consider that this lifestyle may not necessarily be for you.
Yes.
But the first one, like I said, out of order, it's the fact that it does have a POA. And that it could be a pro for some people, but I think generally speaking, most people don't like HOA, POA setups. And I think that is one that we couldn't skirt that on the list. I had to go on the list.
Correct. And again, anytime you have a body of people making decisions on your behalf for your real estate, there's again pros for that, and we talked a little bit about that in our last video, right? Having a property owner association gives us amenities like the golf course, like tennis courts, like a seasonal pool.
Most importantly, road maintenance and trash.
The 2 most important things. Road maintenance and trash, because we're, in a private community. So those are wonderful things. And there's a lot more regulation, especially because when you live in the middle of the national forest, you want to make sure that there's things that are being enforced on a grand, that everybody kind of has that standard, because it could really affect and hurt your property. So there's pros to that. But since this is the cons video, it could be limiting when you live under an association. There's limitations on what you can do with your land, what you can do with your property. And there's a series of not just steps towards, doing any improvements, but then the financial aspect of assessments, right?
Yep.
Of having to pay an assessment. List, So do you want to walk us through a couple of the sub points or something?
Yeah, so just some sub things to consider. So there's local politics. Obviously, if you're voting for people, you're going to... that's politics. Like people have to kind of vouch, like vote for me for this and X, Y reason. So you have kind of a community split based on who they support.
Correct.
That's one reason.
And again, this is our bias. We're not necessarily giving you our point of view. We're really just kind of giving you a grand scheme of things.
Yeah, this is how it works. There's an election.
Yeah,
and
there's
that's
an
just
election.
Kind of matter of fact.
Yeah, so essentially everybody that lives in Pine Mountain Club has an opportunity to vote and elect the board members.
Also the water company.
And the water, yeah, correct. Yeah. But right now we're talking about specifically they're two separate entities. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the Pine Mountain Club sorry, I got confused. Pine Mountain Club Property Owner Association. Yeah. So PMC, POA, we're talking about that. And the fact that we elect the board, and the board therefore could make decisions that impact the entire community.
Yeah, not could, it does.
Yeah, it does. That could and does affect the entire community. Yeah. For example, the most recent, short-term rental ban. But boom. The number one thing the number one thing is...
That's part of it. No, yeah, so the local politics is one. But, the second bullet point I have is you literally just said
the local politics, I will say another thing about this, too. It does take away from the community aspect and the morale and the feel of it.
Yeah, because once you get into rules and what you can and can't do, people kind of get divided. And
you get divided,
natural.
And that happens. I mean, if you are local to Pine Mountain Club, or if you're thinking about moving here... one of the things that we always do when a new buyer moves into this community is we give them a list of all the community groups that they can be a part of, right? We don't moderate any of those groups. There's actually a couple of people that moderate those. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing this for 10 plus years, even longer than we've lived in Pine Mountain Club. And they're very private groups, and they're anywhere from, 1,000 to 2,000 people, and you get a lot of information about like fire prevention, about news and all
roads
that stuff. But the truth is that in those chats, there's a lot of local politics and a lot of viewpoints opposite from each other, and sometimes the same on issues that happen in Pine Mountain Club. We always address this to our clients because we want to make sure that people that are buying here in Pine Mountain Club understand that we are such a small community, and as much as there could be a lot of support and community aspects and a lot of, events that kind of bring us together. The truth is that there are things that divide people because people come from different backgrounds. People have different, preferences and have different beliefs.
Yeah, totally.
So that's the truth.
And then obviously those politics lean into, which is another kind of bullet point of that, which is just there's limitations. So you can't just paint your house purple. You can't, if you wanted to.
Most people don't want to.
But if you wanted to, and I would appreciate your purple house, but the Pine Mountain Properties Association will not. They won't let you do that. They'll actually fine you. But the short-term rentals was one where it's like, okay, there's gray areas, right? Like, okay, maybe I don't want like a messy neighbor. I get it. But when it comes to loud neighbor. But when it comes to like, can I rent my house on the weekend? And somebody says I can't. Then now we're affecting the value of the property. And so that's when it starts getting sticky, and that's where those limitations can affect you. And it is something you should consider before moving here, because that might be the deal breaker, is like you were expecting to use this every other week, and then every other week in between you were going to short-term rent it on Vrbo or Airbnb. You can't do that. But some other people can if they bought their house prior to 2023. Or 2022, January 1st of 2022. So,
January 15th, they actually changed that.
Yeah, January 15th of 2022, those people can, but I can't. Now there's this weird thing, and that's where, like I said, there's limitations. The POA established those rules, and that's why we consider that a con on our list, not necessarily a pro, because it does overstretch, we think, in our personal opinion, some areas.
And our professional opinion is that it has, having a regulation to that degree has affected value, property price points.
For sure.
Absolutely. It's affected buyer interest. Absolutely.
For sure.
I mean, there was minimum 10 people that I have on a list that had to go to different communities to look
the STR route.
Yeah, because they wanted, and it's not even that they want
the flexibility.
Run an Airbnb or run a Vrbo. They want to have that flexibility because, hey, what happens if you lose a job, or what happens if things, something happens in the family and you can't financially afford this payment anymore? You want to have options. So I think that was a situation where we as realtors didn't necessarily were a huge. We were we were definitely not excited and not thrilled when that was passed, because when we were buying property, there were in talks in that. And for a while, for years, they were in talks with that. For months, they were in talks with that. And once that regulation was passed, which was passed in October 15th, I believe. I got to go back. Then you really had about 2 months to kind of get any property under contract before that cutoff of, at that time was January 1st, and then it was moved up to January 15th,
Right.
the most recent that we've looked into it. So what we say is that there's limitations, and we consider that a con, because as much as you want that recreation, and we talked about that on the pros list, you want that recreation, you want that structure, you want people supporting you. At the end of the day, it's your financial asset, right? So when you have limitations, you just want to consider that. Yeah.
And it's a double-edged sword, because do you want to dig yourself out of snow? I don't. So that's why it's one of those things where it goes both ways. It really does. For me, I like that things are maintained and it's not this like rural Wild West. I do like there's a little bit of structure, but I'm of the school, and there's probably a lot of you that agree with me, like, don't tell me what I can and can't do with my house. And that's a con. That's why it's on the list. But yeah, moving on.
Just one thing to consider, and the one thing I will bring up is assessment, because there's a big conversation right now.
There's
so right now, currently, the yearly assessment, no matter if you have a vacant lot or no matter if you have a structure or property in your lot, and if you own two parcels, 2 lots, you have to pay for double association. Yep. Right now, it's $1,788. So that's the yearly assessment currently right now, 2023, January. There's talks of that being potentially changed, or there being an additional assessment. And there's a lot of politics around that. They actually just had a town hall. Saturday is the busiest time with our clients, so we weren't able to make it, but we were able to watch it on YouTube. So if you're local and you want us to provide that, we happily will. The reason why we're bringing this up is because an assessment really could change. I mean, when we bought our house, it was $1,624, and then within like a year or 2 years, it went up to $1,788, right? So that could be changed, right? That can change. So you just want to be aware of that, and you want to make sure you do your research and you understand what are the things that are coming with you paying for that assessment. You can pay it as a one-time lump sum, which actually a lot of times we do, and you get the bill in January. You get the bill in June, I believe, or July. When did we get it? Was it June?
I think it's like middle of the year. So
I think it's like July or June.
It's due the month later.
And it's due no later than, I think, September. But, we every time we get it, we pay for it, and that's it. Some people like to do the monthly route, connect with the property owner association, have a conversation with them. And when we go through escrow, you get a packet of all the CC&Rs and all the information about the clubhouse. So just make sure you read up on that. When you have whether an agent tells you or not, make sure to do that. I always tell my clients we have a second addendum of disclosures. So those are the reasons, I think that limitation is unfortunate. One of the reasons why it's on the cons list.
Yeah. So we spent a lot of time on that because there's a lot of nuance and there's a lot of intricacies as to why that could be a good thing, or in this case, a bad thing.
Correct.
But next off, we have just like there's like a lack of healthcare and first response on the mountain.
Yes.
And that's with any mountain, even up in the Big Bears, they kind of have the same issues. We don't have a major hospital, so we don't have a Kaiser or a Providence, Holy Cross. We don't have those up here. So if you need to go to
not even a private healthcare physician.
None of that. We have like a small clinic, but I wouldn't go there necessarily.
That's on the back.
Yeah, I would go there for small things like getting like a COVID test or maybe a couple like shots that you might have to get.
We would recommend you looking into what they offer.
Yeah, look at what they offer. But it's a clinic. It's a small clinic. If you need like a specialist or an eye doctor, or you need a dentist that specializes in root canal, like you're not going to find that up here. You're going to have to go to Bakersfield or Santa Clarita. And for some people that have certain health conditions where maybe they're needing to go to the doctor more often, this may not be the best move for you.
Right.
Yeah. And also with first responders, if you call the cops, we don't have a police department. We're countywide. We're just outside of city limits. So it's really only the sheriff's department that kind of governs the community around here. So when you're calling the police, you're waiting for dispatch to call sheriffs to come out. So they're either coming from Lebec if there's nobody at the substation in Fraser Park, that can take a while. It could take 45 minutes. If there's somebody there, it'll take 15. But yeah, if you have an emergency, there may not necessarily be somebody there to help you right away. And same thing with ambulance. You have to be airlifted in certain times. We do have a fire station, which is great. It's in the community. But those are just things to consider. Is we don't have first responders, and healthcare can be troublesome for some people that may need it more often.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know that there's been a couple of sellers that's the reason why. Sometimes people ask me, why is your client selling? And a lot of the time it has to do with they're looking to retire. They can't do the weather anymore, but it really is correlated to their health. They can't necessarily be there because of certain, they need to have access directly to their doctor or to a hospital. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the one thing I always tell my clients. Or if you're
pregnant, you have a baby.
Or if you're pregnant, or if you're going to be due, or if you're thinking of growing a family, you want to think about those things. You want to think about how important and detrimental it is right now. If it's something that you're like, I don't mind, I can drive 45 minutes to an hour, and go to Santa Clarita or go to Bakersfield, then that's great. It kind of works out. But if you're like, I really need to be monitored.
If you're on dialysis for kidney issues and it's something you do every day, twice a day, it may not be the most ideal circumstance.
You just want to consider that. Absolutely. And there is an orthodontist in the village. Again, you can look up his hours. We can give you definitely his contact information, or you can type up on Google. But outside from that, it really is going to be you go into a major city. So that's one of what we would consider a con. For us, it wasn't really a deal breaker, but I know it just really depends on your lifestyle. So again, what we're bringing up is not necessarily just our perspective. I know you brought that up earlier today, but I think it really is just
things to consider.
Things to consider, because we always want to disclose that there are no. I know that there was a situation where 911 was called, and I think it took about 15 minutes for the EMT and the fire department to get to the location, which it's pretty good response time. But
I thought that was a good response time.
Yeah, 15 minutes. I mean, actually, that was brought up in the board meeting recently that happened on the 21st of January, and the general manager, Karen from Pine Mountain Club, she shared where I think they called 911 anywhere from like 8:02. Don't quote me. I totally forgot the name. It was something like 8:02 to or 5:02, and then they showed up at like 5:15 or something. Okay. So it was like a very short time frame. And where the first responders definitely picked up and
I actually think that's crushing it. Good job, first responders out there.
Yeah, we're really thankful for you and your service.
But so that's something that absolutely consider. That's
just gotta consider
unbiased.
that.
Like you said, it's not really that's not our perspective.
One of our clients that was moving in, she was pregnant at the time that she was, and she had a couple questions. We're not, we don't have kids, so we're not in that season yet, but that's going to be something to consider once we're in that season, right? And we're going to have to look into all the options. So that's definitely something you want to think about, especially because health is so important to everybody's well-being in life.
Right. So that's good. So the next big thing that we had kind of bucket was lifestyle adjustments. So a couple of these, to be honest, they were pros to us. They're actually on our pros list, but we understood we had to kind of think broader, like the bigger consumers.
I know that's
some
why
of our
earlier
clients,
when you mentioned like this is from our perspective, I'm like, it's a little hard.
Well, it is from us living there. We're speaking from like a position of authority and like, hey, we've lived there. These are our experiences.
Correct. I just wanted to address the whole situation where there's things that obviously from this list or from the other list, we have to be a little bit impartial so that you guys could kind of understand. If you want our direct opinion, I want for you guys to ask us, give us a call and say, hey, Karen, what do you think about this? What is your actual opinion? And because I think it's important for us to share that with you if that's important for you. But I think today we need to we want to help you understand the big, broad picture.
Yeah, exactly. So lifestyle adjustments are a con. Like I said, some of those things were on our pros list, but from a general perspective, we understand they could be cons to some people. So this was one that was on our pro list, which I think can easily be considered a con by someone else, which is just inconvenient access to stores. So for us, we like the fact that we just have the general store, we just have La Leña, but we know some of you are going to want your Targets, you're going to want your Whole Foods, your Sprouts, your Targets, your Best Buys. that's not up there.
Correct.
It's just not up there. So if you're having to make those trips more consistently because that's just part of your routine and the things you like to do, then you got to account for that. That's definitely a con that you're going to have to go 50 minutes in either direction, north or south, to go to those restaurants and those establishments that you like to go through. So if you're a weekend warrior Target goer, then it's probably going to be something that becomes inconvenient for you. And you're going to be like, man, I don't like this because I like having those things accessible.
Yep.
So that's a big one is we don't have those stores. It's not a commercialized place. And truth be told, it is a small community. I don't think that's ever going to change. It's always going to be small, kind of mom and pop, I think, for the foreseeable future.
Unless a franchise comes in and, there's, something different. For those that don't know, actually, the Pine Mountain Club Village is completely a separate entity from the Pine Mountain Club.
Yep.
Property Owner Association Clubhouse, right? So the Property Owner Association, they manage the golf course, the offices, the amenities, but the entire village, those are actually buildings owned by individuals, and there is a board as well that there's a president,
small business owners,
correct, that kind of takes care of all the entrepreneurships and all the local merchants and everybody that has this spot there. We have a spot there, and now they're starting to have monthly meetings on that and kind of get everybody together. So I think that that's an important thing, and I would call this just counting the cost, right? Yep. Like counting the cost on like what your preferences are and what your lifestyle is. And I always hit home for that for all of my buyers. And I say, do you really see your life? Because it's affordable here.
Yep.
The location, it's a great location to all the major, big cities. And can you really, see yourself living here day in and day out and living this lifestyle? And if your answer is no, I need to be going to Target, I need to be going to Stater Brothers or Costco or whatever every single week, then that is a big cost that you have to count, especially in a 4-season community.
Yep.
Because we're going to have times where it's, that commute, even though it's only an hour, may be a little bit longer because of weather conditions or because of, I'm not sure, because of, things that could happen. So that definitely is something that we didn't think it was a big deal. We do bulk shopping.
Yeah, we buy everything once or twice a month.
Once or twice a month. And Amazon does, any UPS, FedEx vendor does deliver to your door, not food, but there's a couple of food delivery options that come locally as well. Sparklix comes and delivers water. Like there's certain things that if you're accustomed to, you're going to still get those amenities to a degree.
Yeah, totally. And so that's one aspect to consider. Another thing is there's limited phone and internet providers up there. So there's only one cell phone service that works up there, and that's
consistently.
Verizon. Yeah. So AT&T, some of the other ones are spotty depending on how strong the signal may be. I would just consider that a moot point. They don't work. Correct. If that's all you got, you're kind of screwed. The only thing that works up there is Verizon, but it does have they do have a strong cell service up there. So if you have Verizon, you're good to go. But if you're currently on like AT&T or you're trying to save with Metro PCS, or you're trying to save a little bit of bucks, you're going to have to go to Verizon. I think they're one of the pricier vendors to buy like a cell service from. So that's for sure a con. I enjoyed my Google Fi. Google Fi was great, but we did have to switch over to Verizon when we moved up there. Yeah, immediately. Yeah. But we ported our numbers. That wasn't a hard process. We still have the same phone numbers, but we had to give up the kind of the service that we were used to. It was kind of like pay by data or whatever.
Yeah, some people like family plans, and I think Verizon has that too.
It's objectively pricey.
Yeah, it's just pricier. So you're gonna have
like
to make that move.
It's like a meme. Like if you have Verizon, it's like that guy's got more money than he knows what to do with. Like that's the cell phone service that it's a meme. But yeah, so Verizon's pricey, but it does work well, and it does work well everywhere else. Like you have pretty good coverage, like US wide. So there's that. And then lastly, from that bucket is there's no trash. So if you're coming from the city, you're used to having your little blue bin, your black bin, your green bin for your green waste.
That's out your door.
Yeah, all that is not the case. Don't even think about leaving your trash outside because bears will tear it up. And they'll probably tear your house up. I'm going to be real. So if you're up there, you make sure you have a safe place to store your trash, and you have to make convenient, kind of constant trips. Maybe, it depends. For us, it's like twice a week where we got to take our trash out. We take it to this place called the transfer site where they kind of crush it and manage it for you. Big Bear's the same way. So you do have to take them to bear boxes, and then they kind of distribute it to their transfer site. But very similar to that, you can't just leave it in the front and someone's going to pick it up.
Correct.
That may be an inconvenience because if you're constantly on the go, or maybe you're kind of like stuck in your house, you're working, and you don't have time to take your trash out.
Or if you have disabilities that you can't be driving all the time, or in certain weather conditions, that's going to be a con, because you definitely, unless you're okay with in your house keeping, stinky trash. I'm not talking about if you have a garage, leaving it in the garage. No.
Don't do that.
Bears, and that's another thing that's I would say a pro of living in the mountains. We love that there's wildlife.
You have to respect that they're there.
You do. There's the con is you cannot leave trash anywhere in your deck, in your garage, in the front door, by the doors, by the windows. If we don't live in a some people that have a 1-story, very short level, no level to the ground. That
bear's there, man. The bear is what's up, man? I smell fish.
It's going to say hello. Yeah. So it's one of those things where you really need to consider, and that's part of the paradigm shift of I'm going to count the cost, and is this going to be a practical thing? Am I going to be okay?
My neighbors are humans, and my neighbors are animals, and I need to responsibly take care of my trash.
Correct. So all the trash transfer site, always take my clients on a tour, and I show them exactly where that is, and you just kind of divvy up the trash, recycle, and this and that.
But you might personally get sick of having to go to the post office and having to take your trash out, and that's just the truth. So we had to put that on that list. For us, it's a nice thing to kind of get out, see who's out in the town, go to La Niña.
Go to the post office. I mean, we're always out and about.
You get to meet people at the transfer site, so it's like, hey, what's up? And they're happy to see you. Everyone, you kind of get to meet everybody. So we think that's a cool thing.
Jade, I've met Jade.
Yeah, she's cool.
Super awesome.
Everybody loves her on the mountain. Savon's there. He takes photos for us sometimes. But it's cool. There's a cool small town vibe. But that is a con because I've always grown up used to, municipal trash.
And you also got to think about every June 1st, we have to do a lot clearance.
Yeah.
And even though this is, we didn't really talk about it on the pros list. For me, obviously, I want to keep my house intact. So that would be a pro, and I don't want any fires. But the con for some people may be yard work. Right?
You
have to make sure that your lot is clear and ready to go for fire season,
so if you got
the summer.
Deciduous trees and during the fall, they're beautiful, and you're like, oh, they're so beautiful. Look at all the leaves. You're going to have to pick those up in summer.
Yep. All the pine needles. Pine Mountain Club. A ton of pine needles.
Those are hard to pick up.
A lot of pine trees everywhere. And especially if they're in your house, you got to, make sure any
roof,
dead leaves,
all that stuff.
Anything that you take with you there's actually an area specifically designated
for
right next to the transfer site where you would do that. And it would be due every June 1st.
Yeah. So that's like just keeping it real. I don't like doing yard work, but it is a responsibility out there. Yeah.
That could be a con. I mean, the first year we did it, we did it ourselves. The second year, we hired someone to do it.
It's a lot of work.
We're just busy people. So it just kind of depends,
Yeah. But you will, like I said, full disclosure, you will be cited. So if the fire department will drive past your house. They'll give it a once over. If you didn't decide to do it that year, you will get a notification to remedy it from the PMC Association as well as Kern Fire. And you will be fined.
And the Kern Fire Department now requires a compliance. We call it fire hardening, which means protecting your home from fire. And that essentially means that you need to have clearance of your house at a certain distance.
Yep.
So if you haven't done that, it passed July 2021. So any property that was purchased after that needs to have that compliance once you sell the property.
Yes, that's good. So if you're buying a house up there, be persistent that the seller provides you an AB 38. That's what it's called.
AB 38. And if they don't provide it to you, because sometimes it's not that they don't want to provide it, but Kern County Fire takes a little. They either don't know if the realtor's not aware. A lot of realtors up there aren't aware. I've had to advise them of this actually, even if they're local. But we always do it for all of our sellers, and we always request it for our buyers as well. And sometimes though, because the escrows are about 30 days and Kern County's super backed up, Kern County Fire Department's backed up, then we just make sure that, that compliance gets completed and it's provided to the buyer. Yeah. So if you want to understand more about AB 38, let us know and we'll make sure to take care of that for you.
But ask for it. If you're buying a house up there, you are if the seller doesn't do it or somebody doesn't do it under escrow, you're gonna have to do it within a year.
You're gonna have to do it
Otherwise,
within
you
a
will
year.
be fined. I don't know who enforces it, but there's a possibility.
There's a possibility.
Don't
So
test the
if you're our
waters.
client, we'll take care of you. If you're not our client and your realtor didn't do that, you're watching this because you're a neighbor and you just piqued your interest
You have 1
to
year.
follow us.
You have 1 year after closing to get that. But cool. So that's a good one. That's actually a really good one. But the next one is so the first pro that we had was the price point was like, oh, fantastic price points in PMC. Unfortunately, on our cons list, we also have rural expenses.
Correct.
So it's kind of like the rural tax. If you live, you may get your house for super cheap, but there's going to be things up there that you didn't account for that are going to raise your monthly expenses that you necessarily wouldn't have had to worry about in the city. So we can just go through those. One of those is just winter living in preparation.
Correct.
Yeah. So you're going to
Really, everything we talked about earlier has a lot of expense.
yeah.
Right?
So you think about it, you're going to have to buy chains.
Well, no, let's start off the assessment. So you have the Pine Mountain Club assessment, but
Yep.
that
Oh,
of
yeah.
course includes trash and includes clearance of the roads, which
Yep.
they do a really great job. We've never had a situation where we've ever had a bad
No,
experience
they're
with
solid.
clearing.
They get everything good.
Cul-de-sacs are always the last to get, plowed. So just so you know, but even ours, we live in a cul-de-sac. We've never really had an issue. Number two, I guess we would talk about lot clearance. That could
Lot
be
clearance. You might have to pay somebody to do that. Yep. So that can be an expense. Then there's winterization of your house. You want to make sure all your spigots are covered. You want to make sure, you got propane in for the winter. You want to make sure you got all your snow coats. Because if you live in LA or Bakersfield, any of these local SoCal, your winter gear, it sucks. It's probably not winter gear. And you're not going to know that until you're actually in a four season community and you're like, oh my gosh, my thing from my cold jacket from Nordstrom's, I'm super cold, and it's because it's not rated for that. So you're gonna have to get the Columbia,
the right boots.
Yeah, you're gonna have to get
gear.
waterproof boots,
and not just for you. You're gonna have to get the yak tracks. So you can have
you don't slip on ice.
So you're gonna have to get a lot of personal gear. You're gonna have to do landscaping gear. You're gonna have to do house gear.
Yep.
And
you're gonna have to buy wood.
You're gonna have to
for your fireplace if you have one. So there's a lot of these little expenses and
they add up a lot.
Adds up really fast. So it's like your snow gear. You're looking for good snow gear that's going to last you through the season. It's going to keep you warm. It can be anywhere from $500 to $1,000 for a good winter getup. Like good boots,
jackets, boots, pants, fleece
tracks,
pants.
good fleece, like hoodies and stuff. You can hang out in the home or go out and play in the snow.
Mm-hmm.
And that stuff does add up, and you have to account for it. Because if you're gonna buy some Amazon snow boots, man, you're gonna be miserable, and I don't want you to be miserable. Like, get good stuff.
Yeah, no, we know all the great stuff. So let us know if you have any questions.
If you have questions, we can even build out like a nice list of things we would recommend.
Well, we actually have an Amazon front page. If you want to get that from us, send us an email. All the information will be down below and we can have that conversation. But
yeah, but there's also higher insurance premiums.
Yes.
So you may have to get California Fair Plan, which isn't very fair. It's probably one of the most expensive types of insurance you can get for fire because we are in a very high fire hazard zone. Mm-hmm. Your insurance may make up, 15 to 20% of the mortgage. And that may be a deal breaker for you if that mortgage premium is too high.
And it goes by, dwelling, personal belongings. Mm-hmm. So a big, very well-known insurance company that insures up there is State Farm's USSA.
AARP, they do it. There's a few places, but it's unlimited. It's limited lots. It's not all the lots.
Correct. So, for example, if we're out shopping, one of the things that I do a lot for my clients is connect them to the lender, and the lender will usually have a preferred home insurance agent that will pull you potentially a quote or will let you know, hey, this property is insurable or non-insurable. And it just kind of depends on the lot and the property. So
that's what I call those the rural tax because yes, the house was cheap, but then you do have and then obviously you're going to be spending more on gas, on brakes, on oil changes, snow tires, chains, emergency kit for your car.
Correct.
So all of these things,
tape for your plumbing.
It adds up really, really fast. So that's the rural tax. Just because of being out there is going to have some expenses, and then you're also operating on a septic system. So every couple of years, you're going to have to pump that.
Everything in Pine Mountain Club is septic system. There is no natural gas. Everything is propane.
So everything.
as well.
So every year, there's a good chance if you're using your heater, like most, the average normal person who wants a normally heated home, you're going to be going through about maybe a tank and a half every season. That could, depending on the size of your tank, easily be over $1,000.
Yeah.
So this is the rural tax. You are going to get your home at a cheaper value, meaning you're going to have a lower mortgage. But these things could tack on what your monthly expense could be, and you should consider that. And then you got to
think about also contractors, handymans. They're limited too. I mean, I have a really great list of vendors that my clients have used and that they're reputable. There's people that we've used that unfortunately haven't had our experience and I've had to remove from my vendors list. But the people that are in good standing with a lot of my clients and have been used by my clients, I have a roster of that. So, and a lot of them are always booked up because there is such a demand out there. But what I would say is not to let that deter you. Again, none of these things are to scare you or to make you feel like, oh my gosh, like this place is horrible or these are so many things. We just want you to really count the cost. A lot of these things weren't deal breakers for us, but they may be a deal breaker for you. And we just want to make sure that you understand that we have these sort of conversations day in and day out with all of our buyers about so many things. And obviously when I have a consult with them, I kind of understand what they're looking for and I'm able to share with them. And you're going to get disclosures from Pine Mountain. You're going to get CCNRs from the association. So you're going to have a lot of information. But the truth is, let's just be honest. When you're going through an escrow, it's so overwhelming. You're thinking about so many things. You're thinking of moving and getting all the finances to the lender and this and that. The last thing you're going to do is sit there and read. I recommend it, and I hope you're doing it. We did it for when we bought our houses, but some people won't. So the reality is you're not going to sit there and read a 50-page, PDF, CCNR packet. But so that's why you need to immerse yourself and do the best that you can. But yeah, everything's going to be costly. Gas, no tires. I mean,
everything adds up.
It's going to add up.
So get ready for this. The rural taxes is a real thing. So adjust according to what your mortgage is at the end of the day. All those things have to make sense for you so that you're not like house poor or community poor, like you have money to do things. And
absolutely.
So account for all of those. All that stuff's super important.
Or once you move there, like I didn't know, or just hate it. That's like the last thing like we want for someone to hate where they're living.
Yeah, sometimes it seems like we're trying to downsell or convince people not to move there. It's not that. We just really want them to holistically buy into the lifestyle.
Because there's a lot of locals that may look at, just not just us as real estate agents, but any real estate agent. And it's like, stop having people move from out of town. Like a lot of people sometimes may complain. And this is where we talk about getting the local politics, not just from the Pine Mountain Association, but just in general. We know that people that live here and have lived here for a long time enjoy the peace and quiet, enjoy the tranquility, enjoy certain things. And that's why the short-term rental ban was, so many people were excited about the ban because they don't want loud people from the city coming and ruining our amenities or whatever. But then there's also people that feel like the opposite. So I get both sides. I understand both perspectives. But the truth is that, where I was going with this, I kind of lost my train of thought. But the point is that, you want to make sure that you count the cost when you're moving to this community and that you remember that try to hold the integrity of the community. Try to be the reason why you're coming here is also to add value and to give, but also remember that this is a private community, a remote community, a quiet community, a community where people want that privacy. So when people are coming in and transplanting and there is a big shift in like people are loud and inconsiderate, it really gives a bad rep. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the locals could be upset about it. So I know that there's been times where across the street from where we live, there's an Airbnb and it's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and they're just like screaming and yelling and, so anywho, those are just sort of the things that you just want to think about and consider.
Right. Yeah, totally. I think the last one kind of does blend into this one in the sense the commute. So there's still a real commute. Like I think that was a pro for us because we're a little far out.
Yeah,
we get to escape it, but some
'cause
people
we're
may not
remote,
like it.
yeah.
And the commute it's a few things, right? It's limited during snowfall, so you may get stuck in PMC for a day or two. If there's a bad enough storm, they may shut down the Grapebound and the 5 at Fraser Park, the entrance, and the S curves, which is the road to get into town. It just may not be you may not be able to navigate it, and you got some knuckleheads that are like, "Nah, I got this, man. I'm gonna take my expedition, drive through it." They get stuck, just lines of cars stuck on it.
I know,
and so that's a possibility. Is you may have to drive into work, you may have business travel, you got to get to LAX, and the roads just may not accommodate because there's an accident or there was a storm that night, and that's definitely a con you have to consider.
Correct.
Yeah. So roads and commuting up and down can be, for sure, it can be laborious if you have to do it often.
It could be taxing, like physically, because you have to commute physically.
And that night you gotta be focused. You got 2 hands on the wheel. You're doing the S curves at night. There's no lights. It's pitch. It's a beautiful thing because you can see all the stars, but it is harder to navigate.
Yeah, there's no street lights. We've talked about that too, and everything in Pine Mountain is in the more residential 25 miles per hour. Once you kind of once you're on the highway, you're about 35 to 45.
45, I think.
But some people are going even faster than that.
Yeah.
But in winter, you really just want to be careful. So I think that there's obviously the laborious, like physical, like that it could take on you. If
you're doing it often.
If you're doing it often, but there's also the safety, right? So if you're not taking care of, your car, of your chains, of your tires, or what type of engine you drive, you potentially are putting yourself at risk and other people at risk. So it's important that you consider when you're moving here, all of those things, because if your car gets stuck,
it's one road to get in and out.
Yeah. I mean, there's a back way, but the reality is that, most people are going to...
That spits you all the way out in Ventura, so it's going to take you probably 4 or 5 hours to make it back to the valley if that's where you're from.
Yeah, so I think that, at the end of the day, you just want to consider those things, because when you're part of a small community, you just really need to be mindful of how your decisions impact everybody else. That's kind of the point I was trying to drive home, and you really want to count the cost on those things, because there's been times on our Facebook pages where if you're speeding or if you're like being crazy, people are going to record you. They're going to put you on blast. They're going to put you on blast, like you license plate and all, they're going to put you on blast on the pages and, take photos, take videos and call you out. And, there's been times where I felt like, oh, I better pull over because someone is like, and I'm not saying that there aren't emergencies or situations where people are legitimately trying to get to a loved one, but be safe, because even whether it be summer, spring, or winter, you make a wrong turn in any of those S curves, and
it's always the same culprit.
It's dangerous.
The monster trucks. Those guys always drive super fast.
Yeah.
So, so that's just something to consider. And I think that's kind of like the long unabridged version of the cons that we should consider.
Correct.
So if you haven't seen the pros, if you've seen this one first, please watch the pros one. I don't want to make it seem like PMC is the worst place in the world. But this is just a balance.
We just want to give you guys a collective perspective, because these are the things that a lot of people don't talk about. And there's been times where I've met new transplants, and obviously I haven't worked with them, because these are very much conversations we have with all of our clients. And I've had verbatim, if you go to my Google reviews, they'll even write reviews about it, and they'll say everything Karen told us happened to the T, from, how, the Facebook pages could be, to like, how, you could feel in town, or, so we're going to give you our perspective. Of course, we're going to give you a general view, but we just wanted to bring the cons and the pros, because the last thing we want is for you to be, not sure of this. And if any of these cons, like us, sound like
deal breakers,
deal breakers for you. And I say cons because for us, they're not cons, they're pros. But for some of the cons, if they are deal breakers for you, then this is not the community for you.
Just real
talk. I talked to a gentleman recently, and one of the things that was a con for him was the temperature. It's right now in winter, it's about 30 degrees consistently. In the evenings, and during the daytime, it's about 40s. that was too cold for him. I mean, for me, I'm like, oh man, that's great. Like, I'm so used to it now. But like for some people, it's like they can't do it. So immerse yourself, ask the questions, go to, talk to locals, get a local real estate agent. We're local. We love supporting local families, couples, singles, whoever you are out there, we would love to support you. So
yeah,
that's kind of our 2 cents.
Totally. So watch that pros. If you haven't, if you're coming from the pros, I think this one was rightfully a little longer because you're going to fall in love with PMC. Like there's so much to love. So we wanted to spend a little bit more time to kind of bring you back to earth and help you kind of
practicals.
Yeah, holistically determine, is this the right community for me? And if you heard this stuff and you're like, nothing, I still love this place, then this is the community for you. So this is just a nice, go ahead and check those lists and be like, don't matter. I'm ready to move to PMC. Then you're probably ready to move to PMC because these are the big kind of hurdles you have to get over. And if you've already made that decision, you're like, I can deal with that. Then yeah, I would say make a move this year because it's like we called it in the last video. It's the hybrid heaven of 2023. And if you got that hybrid situation or you're not commuting often, PMC is the best place to probably live right now. It's you got access to all the big cities.
Or own property and just keep it in your portfolio, your real estate portfolio. That's what we're going to do. So I think for us, we're so excited for what's to come. So thank you for joining us today and allowing us to share some of the cons that or some of the things you should consider before moving to Pine Mountain Club.
Totally. So thanks again, guys. All the information is below. Please subscribe, helps the video, helps the community. And we'll see you again next week.
Yeah, comment if you have any questions.
Yeah, anything below. Bye, guys.
Bye.